Hey there, crafters and stashers. Welcome to the CraftStash podcast. This is episode 108, Chutzpah, and I'm your host, Kim. Hey guys. Welcome to another episode. Tonight is Sunday night. It is March 23rd, 2014, and I'm coming to you live from Kim Post Bronx Ale House beer garden. So that's why I'm a little frazzled. But I'm coming to you from New York City in our top secret recording location, aka the bedroom. And it is a lovely Sunday night. A special shout out thank you to Heather, who is Rye Crafty on Instagram, for the title of this episode, Chutzpah. She posted that as a comment on an Instagram photo that I posted a couple days ago after I was talking about some of the shenanigans that I had going on for the chuppah that I'm knitting for my sister's wedding. Yay! What I'm crafting includes an FO, so I will be a little bit sing-songy. Because here it is. It's this lovely, lovely luxe cowl. Oh, great. And the tiny little decoration motif is showing up. I don't know if you guys can see. There's a bit of a triangle motif happening. This is a very, very, very simple cowl that I was knitting. I used some yarn that I had bought at Vogue Knitting Live in New York City. The darker eggplant purple that you see on the outside is 100% cashmere from Hebrew Textiles, and the inside is a silk mohair blend, also from Hebrew Textiles. The quick story with this is that it's a very simple stockinette one-piece cowl that I cast on maybe 200 stitches for, somewhere between 180 and 200 stitches, and just knit in stockinette, except for that little section where I did a random piece of, there you go, you can see the holes there, where I did a random section of kind of 6 holes of lace in a pyramid shape. And then towards the end, as I was working the mohair, I don't know if you guys can see this because it's mohair, but I did a knit 3 purl 2 rib just to give it some structure and stand-uppiness at the very top. And I blocked it very loosely, and it's this amazingly lovely cowl. I knit this on size 3 circulars, and the whole point was that it would fit over my hair and become a really soft, comfy, slouchy, very, very warm, close to the face kind of cowl. And it's doing just that. And I based this off of a cowl patterned by, I think it was Church Mouse Yarns and Tees. Very simple cowl that they knit a stockinette and then did a 3-needle bind off to close up the loop. But I wanted to be able to wear this as a reversible cowl, so inside out, outside in, folded upon itself, doubled. I wanted to have some options with this cowl, so I just basically left it as a tube. And depending on how warm I want it to be, or which side I want to be in or out, I can kind of flip-flop it around and let it just do its thing. So I'm very happy with it. It was knit on size 3 circular Addy Turbos, 16-inch, and it was a very, very, very mindless pattern, so much so that it took me a month and a half to finish it, because it was kind of boring. But that having said all of that, I'm really in love with it. It's really, really comfy. It's very, very warm. And if I wear the cashmere side close to my face, it's like sleeping inside of a cloud. It's really, really nice. This is my first mostly cashmere project, and I really, really like it. I don't think that I will be knitting tons of cashmere in the future because it is kind of pricey. But it was a lot of fun, and despite the tiny, tiny yarn, I mean, this yarn is so thin. Sorry, I gotta have to keep blowing up my hair here. The yarn is so thin, it's a 2-ply, and I don't know if you guys can tell how tiny and fine this yarn is, but this is me not really aggressively blocking it, and it's very, very thin. But it traps warmth like nobody's business, and I absolutely love it. So yay for finished objects. The other thing that I'm crafting is my sister's chuppah. And the reason that the episode is called Chutzpah is because I am making this huge crazy chuppah for my sister's wedding, and I've gotten to the point where the pattern is going to start its third repeat, and I'm kind of bored with it, and it's also really, really dense. And because this thing is supposed to be a really lacy, airy covering for her wedding, I want it to be a little bit airier, and I want it to grow quicker because it's supposed to be 6 feet by 4 feet. And at 3 or 4 repeats, it's only about the size of a regular pillow, which is not too bad, but again, that's nowhere near 6 feet by 4 feet. So what I'm doing is kind of improvising some of the lace. I guess because I haven't started the improvisation piece, what I wanted to leave you guys with is a couple of tips and tricks if you are improvising lace. The first tip and trick is if you are a member of CraftStash.com, I highly advise you to take Miriam Felton's Designing with Lace class, because it's really, really a good class for learning how to manipulate lace patterns and understanding how to knit lace shawls that are either triangles, circles, crescents, or squares. And she kind of talks you through the process of how to understand how lace works, understand how one lace pattern flows into another lace pattern, and understand how to translate a motif for increases. So a couple of the lessons learned for me in particular is that I quickly figured out that I was at a place in my pattern where I was doing, I had several sections of 17 stitch lace repeats. I had 32 sections of 17 stitch repeats, but where I was in the pattern, by the time I made up my mind to start changing the lace pattern, I had 17 stitch repeats and then like 11 stitch repeats, so I basically had to keep going until all of my repeats were 17 stitches, so that the 11 stitch repeats had increased to 17 stitches just to make my life easier in translating the lace. And then the next thing I did was I scoured through a couple of my pattern, stitch pattern libraries to find a couple of patterns that either had 17 stitches or had an odd number of stitches so that I could kind of pop them into the middle of a 17 stitch repeat. I only found one pattern out of the 3 books that I have that have lace pattern libraries. Only one pattern had 17 stitch repeats, and I didn't really like it, so what I ended up doing was drawing a schematic of what I wanted this shawl to look like, and then figuring out some lace patterns to fit in that schematic. So loosely, and I have to be careful because of the lighting here, loosely this is the blue section of this diagram is the way my shawl currently looks. That's currently how big it is. And then the pink section is where I'm planning to start to kind of hybridize the lace. You can see that I've got, instead of having one section of increase in each corner, I'm having 2 increases on each side, so that's continuing the square. And then I have to translate the central 17 stitch repeats up across the area. Then because I want this shawl to be a rectangle, I have to kind of stop increasing evenly all around and just increase on the 2 sides, so those are the green sections. And I'm going to do that until I've got my rectangular shape established. And then I'm going to keep increasing regularly around the corners. That's the purple section and the yellow section. I'm a little bit worried about the purple and yellow because from the research that I've done on Ravelry.com, most people say that if you start doing increases as if it was a square on something that's a rectangle, it starts to curve at the edges. But because this thing is going to be 6 feet by 4 feet, I think if I block it, no one's going to yell at me if it's slightly curved on the edges, and that's close enough because I got less than 8 months to finish this shawl. So that's going well. So we'll see how that actually translates. I'll definitely keep you guys up to date as I actually start working on that chuppah mutation, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of where I am so far, so we'll see if my chutzpah pays off. The other thing that I have for what I'm crafting, the last thing that I have for what I'm crafting is an FO, and it's a spinning FO. And it'll be a really nice transition for the next piece of the show. Wow, this smells good. I have been spinning my hand-spun projects, and when I block and wash them, instead of using like Eucalyptus or soak wash, I just kind of use my shower gel. because it has a little bit of oil in it and it smells really good. My shower gel is from, gosh, what's the name of that company? Sabon. S-A-B-O-N, which is the Israeli soap company. It smells really good. So, this smells like my shower gel. Anyway, sorry. I'm really proud of this. It's so pretty, in my humble opinion. This is the Gourmet Stash Fade to Cobalt Poonies that you guys have seen me spin if you're following me on Instagram. I also showed, I think I showed this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. This turned out really, really nicely. This was Gradient Poonies from Gourmet Stash in the Fade to Cobalt colorway. And because I had spun these on my drop spindles and had done a fairly decent job of keeping them even and consistent, I was really worried about chain plying them because I didn't want to reduce the length, and B, I didn't want the chain plies to get thick in some areas and thin in some areas. So what I decided to do was to ply my hand spun yarn with a commercial single yarn. The commercial single that I used was a really, really thin single ply. I don't know if you guys can see, but anywhere that you see a light blue pop, anywhere that you see this light blue barber poling, that's the commercial single, and anywhere you see a chubbier, fuzzier color, that's my hand spun. So I really love how this turned out. I applied this as a 2-ply on my Hanson mini spinner, and it came out pretty good. So ultimately I got about 290 yards of a lace to fingering weight. It varies a little bit, but I'm really glad because had I chain plied this, I would have had a third of that, and had I 2-plied it, I would have totally lost the gradation of color. So I'm really excited about this. 290 yards is a very good amount of yarn, considering that it was only 2 ounces. So yay! Very excited about this. And of course it's in some of my favorite colors. So that's all I've got for what I'm crafting. It's a really nice segue into what I'm stashing. I think that's a good amount for this episode. As you know, I'm trying to keep these episodes shorter since they're on YouTube for now. So I will see you guys soon. I will see you next week. I'm trying to do these weekly because they're shorter. In the meantime, please hop on over to the Ravelry group. The name of the group is CraftStash. If you're on Instagram, please find me. I'm Crayoly. Or if you are just kind of a one-stop shop kind of person, head on over to crayoly.com/craftstash. Pop that into your RSS reader. I prefer Feedly. And hang out with me there. In the meantime, if you can't craft it, stash it. Cheers.